Okay, we're going to call this meeting to order. Joan, can you do a roll call, please?
Director Hockert?
Here.
Director Kelsenberg?
Here.
Director Petrie?
Here.
Director Porbeni?
Here.
Director Riley? Director Fatava?
Here.
Chair Sherman?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Great. Okay, just to let the community know, Director Riley is still sick with a flu bug, so she will not be here again this evening. So we wish her well and hope that she gets better soon. I am going to move to the approval of tonight's agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda? Director Petrie and Director Kelsenberg with the second. All those in favor of approving the agenda, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. All right, so today we are here to continue our interviews for the superintendent position, night 2. So first, it's John Bezick, right? Am I pronouncing that right?
It is Bezick.
Okay, great. Okay, so welcome. Thank you for coming out tonight. We really appreciate your time. The school board members have about 13 questions we'll be asking you tonight, and MSBA is the timekeeper. So they will be flashing cards. If you don't happen to see it, one of us around the table will, and we'll kind of flag you.
Give me the heads up.
Yeah, exactly, so you stay on time. We are listening carefully, but we are taking copious notes. So if we're not making eye contact, it's not that we're not engaged, we're just really very engaged. We have 1 hour allocated here tonight, and our last question will be whether or not you have questions for us. So that's the 13th question. We have provided you a copy. You should have a copy of all the interview questions. And MSBA, like I said, will notify you at 30 minutes, 15 minutes, and 5 minutes remaining. All right, let's introduce ourselves first. And I'll start with myself. My name is Allison Sherman, and I'm the board chair. Welcome.
I'm Katie Hockert. I'm the vice chair.
I'm Vivian Vadova, director.
Pete Kelsenberg, a director.
Annie Porbeni, clerk.
And Bev Petrie, treasurer.
Well, nice to meet you all.
Nice to meet you too. All right, we'll start right in with the questions here. Okay, and we'll rotate in asking these. Yep. So tell us about yourself and why you are interested in becoming the Stillwater Area Public Schools superintendent.
Sure. You know what? This is my 31st year in education. Grew up in South St. Paul, which you know, I always like to mention. I always like to know where people went to high school and grew up. A lot of community support for public education. And I think that kind of fueled my fire. It was a town that, you know, provided a variety of opportunities for kids, and you were never wanting for anything. And that's what I want to deliver for kids as well. I've had a vast array of opportunities, both at the building and at the district level, to have a chance to lead and work with people and provide opportunities for kids. And you know, I've been pretty lucky to be able to find places that I think were good fits for myself and for my family. So in looking at this opening, we're like, you know what, there's a lot of openings out there, and I'm not putting my head in, you know, you can see the list of people, and I'm not putting my head in everywhere, but this is a town and a community that I think would, as we go through this, I think you'll see that there's a fit. Again, growing up in South St. Paul, I worked at a variety of places. Met my wife of 30 years at Mankato State. I had my 30th anniversary yesterday. I've got 2 daughters, Grace and Jenna. They're both college students, one at Madison, one just graduated Madison, is in grad school. So was talking to them about different places, and they're like, you know, that's a place we'd like to come home to, is be over in Stillwater. So you know, I just think it would be a good fit. I like the yeah, I like what the tradition of the community, and I like that idea of you know, embracing the, you know, honoring and embracing the past, but also welcoming the future and seeing what we can do to add to the tradition of the district. So I think my vast array of experiences, again, would just line up well and fit here with the district. So.
Great, thank you so much.
Okay, next question. How would you develop authentic and enduring partnerships with various district stakeholder groups to support the achievement of all students?
Yeah. You know, I think one of the biggest things in this role is to tell the story of the district. I think that's a main job of the any district leadership, but especially the superintendent, is to listen to what the organization and the community is saying, and listening to the vast array of stakeholders. You know, you have people that are sometimes a little bit louder and make sure their voice is heard, but there's a number of people out there, especially in a community like this that, 18 communities that range, 30 miles up and down the river, variety of different socioeconomic levels in the community. It's becoming more diverse. So you need to hear what those stakeholders are saying, and not just the loud ones, and you need to articulate that and build that into some sort of common vision, and then talk about that vision, and talk about that vision wherever you go, and go out and take that message to people. You can't expect people to just come and show up at forums like this. You need to go out, where are the people at, and where can I, sell the district, tell our story, get buy-in, tell the good things that are going on with our kids, tell the good things that our staff are doing, and talk about our needs as well. What is it that we need from the community as we partner towards, building opportunities for kids. So that's what I think, the partnerships are huge. You need to be part of the service organizations, whether you are members of them or at least go to their, you can't be a member of everything, but you could go to their meetings, you can be invited, you can go to their functions, you can make sure that your team is members of their, different organizations in town, so that they see value and they see that the people in the district value the community as well. You're not just somebody that is there for a paycheck. You're somebody there that's there to be part of the community, make the community great, and again, share that story and again, build support. So I'm trying to think here what else. Yeah, I think that covers that.
Great, thanks.
What are your beliefs about building effective leadership teams? How have you implemented those beliefs, and what strategies have you used to provide general oversight of all other school district personnel?
Sure. I've probably the best example of that, I spent 5 years as the assistant superintendent in Shakopee. And while I was there, I'd been a part of a couple of districts with really good systems in place. South Washington County, I was an assistant principal there for 6 years. I was at principal at Tartan High School in North St. Paul for 9 years. Again, both places that had well-established systems for curriculum, for just making decisions. And when we got to Shakopee, it was still being run a little bit without a lot of successful systems in place, and it seemed like you were continually asking the same question, and we had to build those systems in. And while we were there, I was in charge of all of the building principals and making sure we get them on the same page as well, in charge of their professional development and supporting them on a day-to-day basis. And while I was there, I hired the high school principal, the ALC principal, 2 middle school principals, 3 of the 5 elementary principals. It felt like we were, kind of going through a time of change. And at the same time, over that 5 years, we hired a new curriculum director, a new technology director, a new HR director, a new communications director. So it was like a wholesale change. So once you do that, you need to make sure that you look at your strategic plan and maybe review that and get everybody on the same page, so that what is it that what we value? What is it that the board is valuing as well? And can we come together, get that strategic plan articulated, and get that common vision, get buy-in, so that then we can get people to execute that. Because you can have all the best, you can have great people, but you got to get them on board. You got to have that conversation about, I talk a lot about telling our story, and that's on multiple fronts. One is telling the story to outsiders about the district, but also, telling my story and telling, what I believe in as a leader, so that people on the team know where I stand, what I believe in, listening to other people's stories, and then, again, helping us build that common vision, and then going out and telling that to the, the broader people in the district, getting that buy-in, getting that support, so there's trust. If you have the conversations, if you take the time to build that trust, you can get people to, go after that common vision. If you don't take that time to get the trust, if you don't work with people, then you just get a lot of people that are probably working hard, but they're probably working harder than they have to, and they're not working in any, cohesive direction. So you get a lot of, sometimes we see, if you don't have strong leadership, you see a lot of buildings working as kind of independent contractors or, independent states. And that happens when leadership is weak. When leadership is strong, you get that common vision, you work together. And if you have that strategic direction and that roadmap and those checkpoints, and you have established metrics that you're using, you can see if you're being successful or not. If you don't have that, you kind of hope you're being successful. You hope that you're hitting the mark, but how do you know? So, it's the same thing we ask our teachers to do with our, some of the PLCs and some of that. We ask them to, what is it we want kids to know, and how do we know if they know it? So you ask them to kind of articulate what's important. And then are you doing checks to make sure so that you know kids are hitting that mark? And then if they're not, what's that remediation plan? And if we are hitting the mark and we're hitting on all cylinders, how can we enrich the things that we're doing, and go even farther? And where can we push? So that's that's what I believe. You gotta fill in the gaps for people, because if you leave people wondering, that's usually not productive. So.
Thank you.
All right, question number 7. Tell us about a time when you thought of a better way to do something in education.
It's not unique, but I think in Shakopee, we instituted the Pathways, Career Pathways program. We actually designed the high school around Pathways program. So we looked at our curriculum 612 and aligned all of our courses so that they led somewhere. So you didn't just have standalone courses, that they would build towards some sort of career pathway. So kids could say, if I'm taking this course, if I'm taking a FACS course, that could lead towards this. You could be taking it just for the enjoyment of taking the course, but there's also, if this is something that you really have a desire in, that you like, here are the opportunities in this area. So we took a couple of years to research that. Went down to Nashville and looked at their academies model, and we also went down to Kansas City and looked at the MinCaps model and did a little bit of both. We did the career pathways for all kids, 612, and then designed the high school around that. And then we also started a MinCaps program as well. We have a MinCaps program at Prior Lake as well, which is kind of like a internship program on steroids, where like in Shakopee, we have we partnered with Shutterfly and had a classroom out in their buildings, and kids would actually do graphic arts and graphic design and work with their people out on their site. And at the hospital, they worked with St. Francis, and they actually had a classroom in the hospital there and worked there. But that was, again, that was kind of the high-end version of that. For all kids, you had the pathways, in the schools, and kids would, in 9th grade, get a little taste of everything, and then choose a career pathway, for their high school experience. So, and then, yeah. So I think that was, moving that and getting people on board, because you got to have conversations and finding, and people are like, are the kids going to, is it going to balance? Are you going to get to, how do you get kids to make a choice that early? Are you tracking kids and all of those things? And you build in choices and opportunities for kids. So we're not tracking, but we're actually giving kids an opportunity to try something out, and be able to find out what might be their passion, and how things might lead. And I think it was very positive, and I think it's been a good thing. So,
Thank you.
Okay. All right, what has been the most unpopular decision you've had to make, and how did you handle the reaction to this decision?
I'm trying to decide if it's unpopular or just difficult. And the most difficult thing, and it gets to be unpopular, is having in tough times having to cut programs. Cutting programs and cutting good people can be. I've been in districts that have been at times been shrinking, with declining enrollment, or families right now. People are seeing families choosing other options. So you got to make sure that you have good options so that kids want to stay in your district. But cutting programs, cutting staff is probably the most difficult, and sometimes the most unpopular as well, because it's unsettling, because it makes everybody in the organization nervous. That's why you need to do whatever you can to secure, stable financing for the district, looking out at your growth trends so that your enrollment is staying stable, making sure that people feel good about what you offer. Because in this day and age, especially with, if you have students with means, they have the ability to choose to go other places. And if that happens, you start having people leave, and then you have to diminish some of your offerings. And for me, that is the most difficult thing, not being able to offer a full slate of opportunities for kids. And when things get tight, sometimes course numbers get low and you can't always offer opportunities. And I think that's the biggest thing we offer opportunities for kids to find their passion. So we need to do whatever we can to have that full slate of things, no matter what it is. So I think making sure that we have the community support so that we get the funding we need, and we have the enrollment that we need to continue to offer, that wide array of programming. So that would probably, again, that'd be the most unpopular and difficult thing that I've done.
Thank you.
I have the next question. How have you empowered employees to be independent thinkers while at the same time instilling in them a sense of accountability?
I think this question, when I'm thinking of this question, I think of myself as a young teacher, and Karen Norell comes to mind. She was a administrator that I worked with, and I've used this line she gave to me a number of times. I was struggling with something that I didn't think was right, and I went and I talked to her and I asked her counsel, and she listened, and she said to me, "John, you have good judgment. Don't be afraid to use it." And that's, she didn't solve the problem for me, but she empowered me to trust in myself to say, "Hey, you can do this. Your thinking is right. Your thinking is sound. Trust that judgment and go out and do the good things you need to do." I've used that over and over with teachers that I've mentored, young administrators I've mentored, is talking to them and building their confidence, because a lot of times people have the ability, and you can't do everything yourself. You need to be able to delegate. You need to be able to build capacity in people. The number one thing we do is hire good people. We support them, we train them, and we empower them to do good things for kids or for other staff members, whatever it is that they do. So I think I carry that with me all the time. I can see that room we were sitting in when we had that conversation. And sometimes I have to remember that, when I'm pulling in or mentoring a young teacher or even a student or whoever it is, that, sometimes we take for granted the impact we have on people. I remember, sometimes I go and I think about the conversations I had with teachers, the one-on-one conversations, or even a supervisor, and I go, I can remember how I was treated in that room. I remember the tone. I remember if they took the time and really listened to me. And it took me a while to realize that I hate to, and I don't want to sound arrogant, because you don't think you have that same impact on people. You know what? But you do. So you got to take those conversations and those opportunities very serious, and think about what you say to people, and realize that it is a big deal when they come in and ask your counsel or you're giving advice, and that's how you can, again, make a difference. It's how you make a difference with kids. It's how you can make a difference with staff, is building that capacity in them. And if you build that capacity in them, it makes everybody a little bit better. It makes the whole district better, and it makes them, and hopefully they can start doing that with others around them. So let me see if that was, and it's that sense of accountability. If people are motivated, they're going to be accountable, but you do need to have some metrics. That's where we talk about our strategic directions, or do you have a district scorecard that you're looking at, and what is that we're shooting for? And are we, putting those out there as stretch goals so that, it's something that, hey, let's see if we can hit this, and pushing people when they can be pushed. Sometimes you need to, help them along a little bit, but there are times when people need to be pushed out of their comfort zone to try something new because we all get a little bit comfortable. So, but if you built that capacity in people and you built that trust, people run through a wall for you, kids, staff, all. And if you've built that capacity and you've built that trust, people will give you the benefit of the doubt. And in these jobs, in these positions, you need the benefit of the doubt because you're not going to be perfect all the time. Things you say sometimes might get misconstrued. And that's why it's always important to get out there and work with people, talk with people, so that they go, you know what, I've met that guy. And I say this to parents, like whenever I speak in front of parents, I said, well, one of my number one goals in having this conversation with a large group is that you leave here going, you know what, I met that guy. He sounds pretty reasonable. And the ideas that they talked about sound pretty reasonable. So if something happens and it sounds unreasonable, you know, maybe I'm going to give them a call or give somebody a call and check on that so that we can build some trust, because we need to be able to, you know, especially in these times where everybody's questioning everybody or everybody's putting little sound bites out there, you need to have that trust. And any time I have an interaction with somebody, to me, you're going to hear this over and over again, is it's an opportunity to build trust and show that, and also show that I'm competent, you know, because as a leader, we have three main types of influence. I have my positional influence. Great, you know, people know what my position is. You know, I walk in with that, but that's really the weakest because it's just a title. And after a while, people are going to want to know, does that title, you know, the title's the title, but are you somebody I can trust? That I want to learn from, and do you have the knowledge base? And then the last piece is competence, because trust is great, and I could be a nice guy, but if I'm not competent, then it's like, oh, he's a nice guy, and he is the superintendent, but you know what, I don't know that he's that competent. So if you have those last two pieces, that trust and that competence, tied in with the position, you can have a lot of influence on people and, again, do good things. So I think
Thank you.
that's what I got on that
Oh,
one.
sorry.
Nope,
You
that's
were-
all
were
right.
you done?
Nope, I was done.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Next question. What steps do you take to see an innovative idea go from a concept to reality?
You know, I think you got to have some excitement. You got to have a champion for the idea. I think any good program, a lot of times, you know, it's kind of a double-edged sword, because sometimes you get people that are excited about something and then it's their thing. And it's great while they're there, but can it be replicated and can it be built on, and can other people get excited about it? Because you hate for somebody to be gone and then the thing is gone. You know, but if you get people excited, you can get buy-in, you can get other people say, hey, this is a good idea. And then, but how can we make it happen? Does it fit? And how can we get resources? So you need to, again, get those champions, get people excited about it, and then see, does this fit in with our strategic plan, our strategic directions? Do we have a little pot here for innovative programming, you know? So that we can, because that's how you get people excited, and especially teachers that if you're in a, you know, maybe in somewhere for a while, maybe there's something that, hey, I'm going to try something new or have a little tweak in my area, because you just don't want to get stale. You want to have things that excite people. So you look at that, you make sure it fits with, and make sure that we have the resources so that it's sustainable as well. Because the last thing you want to do is give people false hope. You want to be realistic about it. You want to be a champion for it, but you want to also have honest conversations so that people go, you know what, you know, he's just not, you know, blowing smoke. He's saying, you know, he really is going to try and help us, or he is going to support us in running with this idea. So, and then, you know, if you have a goal in mind, you have some metrics of what success would look like and how could it be sustainable, because you can't just do everything. You know, we talk about that a lot because resources are tight. And, but we do have a lot of money available to us, meaning we have a big you know, we have over $100 million budget. We have, you know, the old line, you've probably heard it, we have enough money to do anything that we want to do. We just can't do everything we want to do. So we got to make some choices, and that should be based on what is our vision, what is our strategic directions, what conversations are we having, so that we can say, hey, this fits, because something could be a great idea, but it just doesn't fit here. Maybe there's another place that should happen. So, yeah, and then if then you celebrate the successes along the way. Hey, look at this. This is, and you show the community too. Hey, look at this. And there might be a partner in the community that wants to help support that as well. Maybe they're willing to fund it or just add people or, we do a lot of that, trying to hook our kids and our faculty up with people that would come into the classroom, would, maybe employ some of these students in a creative program or something like that. So, yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
All right. How would you conduct an assessment of the school district's current curriculum and academic resources and its instructional programs and test scores?
Well, I would get together with our district leadership team, and we would dig into things, and we would look at, again, do we have that that strategic direction? What are our goals? What are our metrics that we're trying to hit? Are we hitting those? But we should be looking at our curriculum on a regular basis to see, is there, what are the changes? What's our cycle out there? What are things that we could be doing differently? What are things that some of our neighbors are doing differently that is exciting people? And should we be going out and checking those things out as well? So, yeah, we would, we'd have our benchmarks, our, kind of that's, I don't know if you call it a scorecard here, but you would look at what are the things that we think, in that board retreat, and then we would have our building retreat, data retreats and all those things. What are the things that we think are important that would move you forward? And we talk about that even at a building level, because a lot of times you have math and science, or, in your English, there's scores that can be easily assessed. But what is it in your program, if you're in the industrial arts program or you're in this program, what are the metrics or the things that you think would be important to move your program forward? Because we have those people, PLCing and working together as well, and we're talking all the time about what is it that we want kids to be able to know and be able to do. But we have to have some sort of benchmark to say, hey, what are we comparing ourselves against or trying to hold ourselves to see if we're successful? Do we just at the end of the year go, well, I feel successful? Is there something, though, is there an industry standard that we could be looking at? Is there, college credits accrued in a certain area? What is it that, so there's a variety of ways to look at how can you show that your program is providing value? And then that's the story you get to tell when you're telling parents, hey, this is why my class is important, this is why my subject area is important, this is why this extracurricular activity is important, this is why this innovative idea is important. It ties back to our strategic goals and our metrics, and it is a way for kids to find success and to show that beyond maybe just a test score that, hey, I can do this, or I have this certification. So all of those things are ways to show that we're moving kids forward or moving programs forward beyond just maybe a test score or again, there's a variety of ways to show success, but you have to have something in place if you're not just relying on the more you can make that case and you can show here's what we're leading towards and why this is important, then people will support it and you can get buy-in.
Great, thanks. In 30 minutes.
Describe a time when you wished you'd been more collaborative with others. What did you do and what did you learn?
I used to do budgeting by myself for the building, where you would go in, you'd have your budget for the year, and staff would submit requests, and then people would wonder why was that approved and why wasn't this approved. And what I find is if you are more public with things, and I learned this from somebody at Park Cottage Grove when I was there, was we switched it up to doing those meetings with the department chairs in a room together, and we put everybody's request up on the board, and we wrote, at that time we wrote them down instead of put them on a computer sheet. But what you did by doing that is everybody saw what the requests were, and then people were kind of like, well, I have this in my department, you could have that, or they'd be like, you've been asking for that for 2 years, we could wait on our request. And but what you did by having that conversation out in the open, and you can't have every conversation in the open, but the more that you can have out in the open, you explain things to people, usually when you lay things out and you include people, you get buy-in. Because there's really only, so many, paths to go on something. But what I found was it lessened, it just made people feel like, okay, there's no secret here. But when I didn't do that, I found that people were questioning and asking, and the lesson I learned from that was the more you can be transparent, the more you can pull people in, the less questions they have. Because if people have questions, if you're not, it goes back to that, it's kind of like telling the story of the budget. The more you can tell the story, the more people know why you're doing what you're doing. They don't always, may not always agree, but if at least they've been part of the process or heard the process, they get buy-in. Similar, I think probably the thing I'm learning the most on some of the, with social media and just events that happen in the, at schools on a regular basis, I think the more you can put things out, the better, because otherwise people just run with things. So I think what I've learned is the more upfront you can be, putting information out there within reason, you can head off a lot of the speculation, because usually when people speculate, they're not going to their best place. They're kind of going to their worst case scenario. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, move on to question 13. School districts are responsible for providing a high-quality, equitable education for each and every student. What does an equitable education look like to you, and how will you lead with an equity lens?
This is what we got to be about. We are providing opportunity for kids, and we're public schools. We take all kids in the door. Public schools are the only place I know of that we say, hey, everybody's going to go there. Doesn't matter your socioeconomic status, doesn't know your background, your religion, anything. We're going to put you in a building or in a district, and we're going to say, hey, let's get along and let's achieve it, and do great things, which should be our charge. We should be the best reflection of society, and we should help be moving society forward. Our charge is to meet kids where they're at and fill in the gaps. We should have strong quality early childhood educational programs. We should have strong intervention programs to fill gaps. The earlier, the better. And equal or equity isn't equal. You hear that buzz line. Well, it's not, because not everybody needs the same thing. Some kids need more. Some people have advantages that they're able to, maybe they're fortunate enough that the parents were able to read, be home and be able to read. Others might have to work, and so it's our charge to fill in those gaps, especially those opportunity gaps for kids, because a lot of people get these opportunities to do these great things in the summer or with their families. Well, how do we provide those opportunities for kids that might not, their parents just aren't able to give those things? I truly believe that is our charge. We're in the opportunity business for kids throughout the whole system. So what do we need to do to fill in those gaps and make kids feel welcome and comfortable and be successful? And then we got to tell the story of that as well. I think of when I was in North St. Paul, I remember Paul Brashear, our data guy, pulled some numbers, and he said, look at these kids. These kids are and what was ended up happening was some of our families were afraid to be in some of our lower socioeconomic schools. And he pulled the data on our kids that were not free and reduced, had a lot of things, had a lot of advantages and things going for them. And we were finding that those kids were actually scoring higher in some of our lower socioeconomic schools than some of our higher socioeconomic schools. And the reason we felt, we talked about this, and the reason we figured it was happening was those teachers in those schools were trying different interventions, and those kids were getting those interventions as well, so they were scoring higher than their peers in some of the other schools. And what we need to do is get the story out. Hey, don't be afraid of being our lower socioeconomic school. Don't be trying to white flight out of this. This is a good place. But we got to tell those stories, because a lot of times people think when we start offering, and this is a little bit of a lecture on my part, a lot of people start thinking when we are offering other programs to help kids be successful, they think there's this limited pie and that we're taking away from them. And what we're trying to do is raise everybody up. I use the example, if I had a daughter. I loved her a lot. I had a second daughter. I didn't have to take half the love away from my first daughter to give to the second daughter. There was just more love to give. We need to look at kids that way as well. If there's more challenges in the district and the gaps that we got to fill, yes, sometimes things are going to cost, there is gonna be a cost. I'm not naive about that. But the cost, if we don't fill in those gaps, is gonna be much higher. So that is our charge. Our charge is to fill in the gaps for kids and help kids be successful throughout the system. And the earlier we can do it, the better. So, sorry, I'm a little bit of a diatribe there.
Right, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Give us an example of when you took an innovative approach to solving an educational problem.
I touched on it already. I really felt that pathway work in Shakopee was really, when we went down and we did the research and we got people on board, and we actually designed the high school around the academy. So we had gone out for a referendum in, boy, when I first got there, we were trying to decide whether to build a second high school or just one large high school. And there was an idea of building a second high school, but the community wasn't really buying into that. And it actually got shot down like 2-1. And we had to go out and have a lot of listening sessions with the community members and hear what they had to say. And we were researching, and we investigated that academy's model, and we came back and we got key stakeholders involved, business leaders from the community, parents, student groups, and we talked about, hey, here's what we could do to make this, if you want one high school, which was pretty clear that people wanted, how could we break it up into making it feel a little bit smaller, kids could be connected? And one way we felt we could do that was through that pathways model, so that kids could get hooked in with a group. And so it was more than just, hey, let's do pathways. It was, how can we make a large high school feel smaller so that kids could have a connection? And how could we do a number of things? And also, how could we look at our curriculum 612 and, just revise things so that it made sense if you were taking this course in the middle school, how it led to the next course, to the pathway at the high school. And we looked at all those things, and again, a number of conversations with kids, parents, community members, business leaders, and then we even took people down, parents and business leaders, down to Nashville on some trips to say, hey, this is what they were doing, this is what we'd like to replicate. And that referendum, so the original referendum that failed was about, I want to say about $78 million. We came back with one for $100 million, and it passed 2-1, and we passed at the same time a $10 million tech levy as well. So it was like, okay, we listened to what the community was saying, we articulated that, and we got buy-in from people, and we got their support. And I just very proud of that, and I think it was it showed that if you go out and find something, if you can get people support on, people are willing to pay for something, even if it costs more, if they buy in and they trust and they see the value in it. And that's that whole idea of telling the story and saying, hey, this is what this could do for kids. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Describe ways you would build public confidence in this public school system.
Yes, telling that story. And you're probably getting tired of me saying that line, but that is the job. What are the successes? Celebrating our successes. There's a lot of pride in this community. Yes, there's been, we all have issues. Everybody's dealing with the political divide and out there and all those things. I think as public schools, we need to celebrate our successes, and we could find common ground. We can't cater to we can't get sucked in, catering to the extremes on either end. We got to listen to all people. But I think all people, doesn't matter, very seldom, no matter who I'm talking to, the person on this end of the political spectrum or this end, people really believe, I think, that what their beliefs are trying to make schools better or make the education better for their kids. So you try and find that common ground on, okay, even if I think might be a little bit out there on this one, how can we find common ground? Here's what we're trying to do, and here's how here's how we can work together. Here's how we can celebrate successes of our kids. Here's how we can celebrate successes of our district. And being out there telling that story and finding, and that's why you want to have a plethora of programs for people as well. So kids, no matter what your interest is, you can find something to showcase your success. And if people see that their kids are enjoying what they're doing and being able to develop their talents and desires and find success, they're going to support the schools. And, you know, even people without kids in schools are going to support too. You can invite them in to watch things. You show the value of having a strong community schools and programming for, you know, community ed programming and, you know, things for seniors and all that. So you're just trying to tell that story, get kids out there, get them volunteering, get people in volunteering. All of those things help build the sense of community. And I get it, it's more difficult in a big place like that, but it's more important than ever. How do we get kids out? Because kids are looking for authentic opportunities to do things. I think that's a big thing too. You know, a real world learning and getting out, and you know that was part of that path. Some of those pathways and some of those programs. Can you find internships and opportunities for kids because they want to do things that are real world? And when you find that and you can hook them up with people out in the community, it shows the people in the community too that hey, we have some pretty darn good kids. I still think I think kids are nicer than they've ever been. I think they're smarter than they've ever been. You know, yes, you hear about things all the time, but you hear about anything good. You know, we got to be out there telling the positive stories of what our kids have to offer and what our kids need and how the community can help support that as well. So again, telling the story, telling the story, telling the story.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. We have our last question, and I think we have time. What are we at? 17 minutes. So what questions do you have for us?
What would be the, you know, top one or two things that you think the superintendent needs to address right away? Is there something that's, you know, a whole?
Right. I think that, I mean, there's a lot of things on our plate, but updating, we have a strategic plan that's expiring. So really working collaboratively with the board to get that back up and updated, and, you know, again, building that trust and consensus in that. So not just us, but the community as a whole in that strategic plan. We also have some facility issues that need to be addressed, and we're trying to we had a community design team that we're kind of slowly trying to chip away at some of those projects that are needed. But one project we have, Lake Elmo Elementary, that is in need of a bond, and it can't be done kind of within the means that we have. So that will have to be addressed. So it's telling that story, to use your words, and kind of getting that buy-in from the community and letting the community know how we need that help.
Gotcha.
So that's
when you've done your strategic plan in the past, have you used anybody in particular, or was that a while ago? Maybe you guys haven't been on the board.
My knowledge, and none of us were on the board when the last strategic plan. We're all relatively new to the board, but it was done with the administration directly, I believe, and that's my knowledge. It was with the former superintendent and her leadership team and the board. And I'm assuming that they had some community buy-in and listening sessions, and but I definitely don't want to hog the time here. Those were just the priorities that kind of came top of mind. There are certainly plenty, and that maybe someone else wants to talk about some other priorities.
I would just add that one of the things, and we're not alone in this, a lot of school districts are having to address issues of learning loss that has happened as a result of the pandemic. We are already starting to address some of that with some of the ESSER funds that we had available to us. But I mean, I think that we need a more all-encompassing approach in terms of bringing those students up to speed. And, you know, so that achievement, you know, issue will be one that it would be front and center.
And I would stress, especially too, because those ESSER funds are one time, that how do we move all those ideas and all those successes forward without that, when that money runs out? So, yeah. Anyone else?
Just to add to what my colleagues have said, the achievement gap is an important one. We've had, unfortunately, within the last couple of years, there hasn't been any huge shift in the achievement gaps, and I think that's something that needs to be addressed. So at least we can bring our kids to a level, as they said, that we can all be proud of. So that's an important one for us.
Yeah, I think things like the pandemic, any trauma
Kind of
affects
made it
kids.
a lot worse.
Yep, it hits those kids harder. And,
Right.
yep, definitely.
Anyone else? Pete?
Sure, just to go beyond, so I'm not repeating, just a few infrastructure things, you know, kind of rebuilding and stabilizing. We've had some personnel changes and kind of rebuilding our transportation system just needs some attention and stability, yeah.
I think also equity-wise, if you look at our gifted and talented program and you also look at our assessments for special ed, they don't, they're not done equitably across our district either by minority or immigrant populations.
They
And
don't
they're
mirror the
also not
demographic.
done equitably necessarily for free and reduced lunch populations. Like if you look at our gifted and talented program, the numbers I last saw, there were no children of color in it, and there were no, I think there were very few free and reduced lunch. And then also, if you look at the schools which have the most immigrants in it, they also have the least special ed children in it. And that seems to be like we must be missing something then, and I think that has to be addressed.
We talk a lot of just an easy metric, just is do our programs look like what are our demographics, and do our programs, you know, match, and why or why not, you know?
Yeah, I would concur, and I just think that there's a lot of, I mean, our demographics are changing. We've seen it over the last 10 years, and I think we'll continue to see that. So, you know, we've seen more special ed needs. We have a larger EL student population. How do we find ways to really provide those students with the support that they need, that we need? So I think that there's opportunity in that to do better. And I know we have the staff that has the heart and the skill set and the mindset to do that. I think we just need to, I think it's just it's a change, it's an opportunity. And so I think it's we just need that leadership to kind of take a whole scale look at everything.
That's our charge.
Yeah, exactly. There's more time if you have more questions.
You know, it might tie into this, but I always like to ask, if I'm the guy and things go really well the first year and you're sitting there in the spring going, man, what a great hire that was, what would look different? What would make you say that?
Good question. Director Kelsenberg?
Hold on, I'm formulating here. Okay, you're saying,
You know,
say your question again, I think.
If I'm blessed enough to be the person that you hire, and
Yeah.
you're sitting here a year from now and you're going, boy, what a great fit. This has been great. Are there a couple things that you could think of that would make you say that?
Oh, sure, we would, we want this guy to stay around here, you know, we'd be saying, hey, we made the right choice, let's keep the momentum going. So if you establish that momentum and we're all in on it, like you said earlier, that would be great.
Gotcha, thank you.
I think that for me, I would see, and I think what you're trying to get is maybe where would we be? And wow, I'd be saying that's great if we could have a collaborative relationship between the board and the administration, and just really kind of be in sync to service the needs of our students, and really have that. If we were just solely focused on what do our students need, and we can find that common ground with all stakeholders, I'd be saying this was the right decision.
And it doesn't surprise me with, look, I think most of you are is the longest serving board member maybe from 2018, and you've hired a number of new people, and then you have an interim superintendent, so I'm sure that it's been difficult to articulate that common vision. What is our strategic plan, and how do you get everybody on board and start pushing forward? Because if people are feeling that there's a little bit of, sometimes people will wait for when is this, is leadership ever stable? But you have stable leadership in place and all that, so that I can be supported, I can take risks, I get pushed a little bit, and all of those things. So I think there's a great opportunity here to do those things.
We agree.
Well, it's a good place.
Great. We've got 5 minutes, is that right? 5 minutes? If you have any other questions you'd like to ask.
I think if I was asking another one, I'd probably be making it up. So I feel like I feel like you've got a chance to, is there anything that you're, wanting to know from me? I'm very passionate about public education. I'm a champion for public education, opportunities for kids, huge on trust. I'm a relationship guy, very visible. You're gonna see me everywhere. And because I enjoy being at things. I don't wanna sit at home. I wanna be at events. I wanna be, at what community events are going on, what civic groups are doing things. Especially school events. Love being at school events and just interacting with people and making connections. That's what I do. And I like interacting with everyone. There's not, I would love to be up at Marina on the St. Croix on a Saturday, riding my motorcycle with my wife and talking to people, listening to music at 3 o'clock on Sunday afternoon up there. I'd love to be, having dinner at Phil's, and just, I like when people recognize, hey, you work with the schools, and yeah, I do, and what do you want to know, and all of those things, because it's just an opportunity to tell our story, get out there, build community, and do those things. So I'm passionate about kids, passionate about opportunities, and yeah, that's what I'm about, and working well with people and hiring good people, supporting them, and encouraging them to do good things, because you can't do it yourself. Everybody talks about, the superintendent's vision or the this or that. Yeah, you got to have vision. Yes, you got to be excited, but you got to be able to rally the troops. You got to, again, be able to hear what the organization is saying, articulate it, and get buy-in so that we can execute on some things. Can't, and you don't have that, again, it gets a little stale. People will do good things by themselves, but they won't do great things, so that's what I got for you, and I think Barb's gonna give me the hook here in a second.
Thank you so much, John,
Yeah,
for coming
thank
in.
you
We
guys.
appreciate your time.
Well,
So
I enjoyed it, so,
it was a pleasure to meet you.
I get to take my copy of the questions, and I'm gonna give one more hand.
Yeah,
Why not, right? Thank you so much for
thank you
coming
so
in.
much. Pleasure.
Thank you so
you.
much. Good to meet you.
Yeah, good for you. Pleasure.
Just a reminder, snacks on the table.
Pardon?
If you need snack break, snacks, there's time. We have 15 minutes, so.
No, it's all the house. Thank you goes to
The ringer's off anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't do that. I needed to put in my stuff. That's why it's here.
Oh, yeah, got it. Great. Okay. We're recording. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming out this evening. We're going to start with a quick introduction, and then I'll go into some of the details of how this evening will work. So let's start with introductions first. Go ahead, Bev.
I'm Bev Petrie, I'm the treasurer.
And I'm Allison Sherman, I'm the board chair.
I'm Katie Hacker, the vice chair.
Vivian Vadava, director.
Pete Kelsenberg, director.
Annie Porbeni, clerk.
Great. And we do have one director who is gone. She has stomach flu, so.
Sorry.
Yes. Okay, so again, welcome. We will be rotating, asking you questions today. And during that time, we will likely be taking notes. We just want you to know that's what we're doing if we're not making eye contact. Barb over with MSBA is going to have the lovely time cards to keep you in line. And if you don't see them, one of us will hopefully find a way to kind of let you know where you're at with time if you need that help. And let's see, I think that's it. So I think we can start in on the questions. Did I miss anything? Okay. All right. Question number 1. Tell us about yourself and why you are interested in becoming the Stillwater Area Public Schools Superintendent.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me here tonight. I really appreciate it. It's an honor to be here. I'll start off by telling you a little bit about my family. I'm married to one of the most amazing women in the world. My wife Juliette and I have been married for 25 years. And she's originally from Paris, France, so that was a trick to convince a Parisian woman to want to move to Minnesota, but she said yes. And so we've been on a kind of an amazing adventure ever since. We actually met just down the river in Hudson, Wisconsin. We were both counselors at the YMCA camp. And I had been there for years, and she came as an international exchange counselor. So part of our story is right here. We used to come into town for dinner when we were dating right here in Stillwater. So, and I have to say there's a little extra pressure on me tonight because she loves Stillwater and is really excited about me working here. So yeah, we're just big fans. She would always bring her parents and friends to Stillwater. It's one of her favorite cities. So this is, yeah, it's an important part of our story as a couple. When I was in California as a high school principal, we adopted twice, so we're an adoption family. We have a 15-year-old and a 17-year-old, both adopted. And in fact, we were just in San Francisco with our youngest son's adoption, his birth family. So we're very close with both of our birth families. They're open adoptions. And so that's an important part of our story as a family. Myself, I was born in Bloomington. So even though I married a woman from France and I was a high school principal in California, I couldn't be more of a Minnesota kid. I grew up in Bloomington. I went to Bloomington Jefferson. I played 3 sports back when that was a thing. I played soccer, hockey, and tennis. And of course, my son plays basketball, which I had to completely learn because I didn't understand that game. But I also grew up really in love with music. I played piano. I accompanied the choir in school as an accompanist. I played guitar. I would play for our church youth group. So, I grew up with a real passion for music and athletics. Went to the University of Minnesota, which now you can see my resume. Maroon and gold Gopher to the end, and was really fortunate when I was student teaching to be placed in Minneapolis Public Schools, and they offered me, Patrick Henry, they offered me a teaching job the last day of my assignment. So it's the dream of any young teacher to get a contract offer on your end of your student teaching. So I have had just a wonderful career. You all have seen my resume. In Minneapolis Public Schools as a teacher, administrator, and then principal out in California. Coming back, I've been a district leader in Osseo and Minnetonka. And recently in the private sector, I've spent some time as a chief academic officer for Acceleration Academies and Ed Insights. So really a well-rounded leadership profile. And I think when I look at why I'm interested in this particular position, I grew up in the Twin Cities, and I've always admired Stillwater. It's always been a destination place, a school district, a city, a special place. It's a beautiful location, as you all know. But when I think of this opportunity to lead the school district, for me, it really goes to kind of what I've always seen as just an incredible opportunity here. This is an amazing place, and I think Stillwater has been challenged in some ways. I mean, just geographically, it's challenged. It's so big, but I really see and I know others do as well, that this is a premier school district, even though it has had its share of challenges over the last 20 years or so. And so, as somebody who's watched Stillwater over the last 30, 40 years, as an educator, as a member of the community, I see this as a really incredible opportunity to lead this district at this time when I think you all have a really strong vision for the future. I'd really like to be a part of that. Not a 5-year plan, but a 25-year plan to really position Stillwater to be that jewel school district that I think you all believe it can be, and I do too.
Thank you.
All right, second question. How would you develop authentic and enduring partnerships with various district stakeholder groups to support the achievement of all students?
Well, for me, the key, there are a couple of key words here in this question. First of all students. It means everybody. And so that's really an important point here. And the authentic and enduring partnerships for me, they really come from building relationships with our community members. When I was an assistant principal at Washburn in Minneapolis, and the first wave of Somali immigrants came over, we sat with the elders, and we learned from them how to best serve their sons and daughters. When I was a principal in California, and there was a strong anti-immigration movement, I met with our Hispanic parents and talked to them about how do we make this school a welcoming place, despite what they were feeling in the community. And in both those environments, it was about working together, building those relationships, sitting down, listening to what the parents of those children felt they needed. Sometimes we make the mistake of imagining that we know what people want, and you always need to get close to those who are most impacted. And for me, that's been the most important. And it doesn't happen quickly. It happens over time. You have to build relationships. You have to show up in person over and over again. When that's how people begin to trust you. And so for me, that's been the key in my experience, to really be present in the community, to be working closely with the parents and the community members who are closest to those, to all groups of students, and to really make sure that what we're doing with our academic programming and all programming is really balanced and designed to invest in all learners. And I think that's really important. And a place you can always look at the data. You can look very closely at how the data is telling us we are doing with all of our subgroups. And when we see subgroups, populations that aren't achieving at the levels that others are, that's a problem. And we need to pay attention to that. So it's having that proximity to the community, and it's studying the data and making sure we understand that we're keeping our promise with all students achieving at high levels.
Great, thank you.
What are your beliefs about building effective leadership teams? How have you implemented those beliefs, and what strategies have you used to provide general oversight of all other school district personnel?
My belief about building effective leadership teams is about setting high expectations from the beginning. I think if you want to have a culture of excellence, it starts with the way you set your expectations for your leaders. And for me, that's job number one. But it's much more complicated than that, obviously, because anybody can set a high expectation, right? It's what do you do to support people and get them to rise up to that expectation? And I feel like that's an area where I am really skilled. I know how to work closely with leaders. I know how to grow leaders. I've done that in my professional life. And there are letters of recommendation from my direct reports who talk about that. And that's not a small task. To be able to grow leaders so that they can perform at high levels is what you expect out of a superintendent. And that is, I think that is when you start to have effective teams, when leaders know that they're being supported and that they can reach those high expectations. That's when you start to see effective teams flourish. It says here, how have you implemented those beliefs, and what strategies have you used to provide general oversight? So the way you implement what I just described is you meet regularly with your leaders. You have very clearly articulated goals. You start the year with very clear goals. You meet regularly. You have benchmark, check-ins to see where are you on that journey towards reaching those goals. There's a mid-year evaluation. I would assume it would be connected to my mid-year evaluation with all of you, and that you would see a direct correlation between my performance as superintendent and the performance of the leadership team, and that I'm monitoring them and managing their goals accordingly. So, it's really about proper goal setting. It's about high expectations combined with support, and I would say that, just to make sure I'm getting all of the question here, have you used to provide general oversight of other school district personnel? I think that kind of goal-setting environment is contagious, right? That it starts from the superintendent, it goes to the district leadership team, to the school leadership teams, and et cetera. And when you set that kind of an expectation as a superintendent, that this is an organization with high expectations, we're building a culture of excellence, that you are expected to hit these metrics. And if people are supported in that environment, you'll find that they rise to the occasion. What you're trying to do as a leader in this case is you're trying to get the best out of people. And that is, I think, the best way to do it.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go to number 7 here.
Yeah.
Tell us about a time when you thought of a better way to do something in education.
With the years I spent in Minnetonka as assistant superintendent, I think there are a number of initiatives that I led that I believe were life-changing for the students who participated in those programs. Now, the part of this question that's a little bit hard is it says that I have to have thought of it myself. And I'll just say, in my experience as a leader, that's not exactly the best way that things happen. Oftentimes, as a leader, I'm identifying the ideas that staff have or leadership team members have. It's not necessarily about me and my ideas. It's about my ability to recognize great ideas and to nurture those ideas and those leaders who have those ideas and help that idea flourish. So, I'll point to an example. When I was in Minnetonka, in fact, it was my first year, we had a platform that staff could use to identify their ideas. We called it the Big Hunt for Ideas. It was called the Big Hunt for Ideas website. And we had a couple of social studies teachers who submitted an idea, and it was this. They said, our academic program is fantastic, and our students do incredibly well, and they go on to great colleges, et cetera. But what seems to be missing is real-world application. And they envisioned a class or a program where the curriculum is built on application of learning. And so this was their idea, and we would vote on these ideas as a staff, and this was voted the #1 idea. And I worked with those two teachers. Long story short, we built a prototype of a program. It was a combination of 3 courses together, and for half a day we had students participate in a program that became the Vantage program in Minnetonka. Now, fast forward 10 years later, Vantage is one of the most successful and popular programs at the high school, and it all started from this really fantastic idea that we could and should create more real-world relevant learning in our regular core academic program. And I think what we did in building that Vantage program collaboratively was we really created a pathway for students who, when they became juniors and seniors, had started to become a little bit bored with the academic program, with sitting in rows and taking notes every day in the traditional form of school. And we gave those students an option, something different. And it ignited their passion. I would have parents come up to me and say, we thought we'd lost our son. He would sit at dinner and wouldn't say a word. And then he participated in the Vantage program, and now he shakes our hand, he looks us in the eye, he talks about school, and it's like we got our son back. And those kinds of programs change kids' lives. And I feel like there's a lot of opportunity in education for us to be more innovative, to look for opportunities to create programming that will, that will align with kind of the 21st century world. And students are hungry for that. They're waiting for us to create those opportunities because they can't do it themselves. They need us as leaders to create those pathways. So Vantage for me is the example I'd come up with. I can't take credit for the idea by myself, but I worked, I rolled up my sleeves and worked with those teachers every day to make that program a success.
Thank you.
All right. What has been the most unpopular decision you've had to make, and how did you handle this reaction to this decision?
Well, several come to mind, unfortunately. But the first I would talk about is the year when I was a high school principal, when I had to suspend the valedictorian at prom. And I just give that example because I think it says a lot about what you accept when you step into a leadership role, because it's not going to be all glamour. There's going to be some hard decisions. And as a high school principal, I greeted every student who walked into the door for that dance, every dance. I was always there. And I knew every single one of them. I mean, there were 3,000 kids in my high school, but I knew them all. And when that party bus unloaded that group of students, and I knew what had been going on, I didn't have a choice. We had to do the hard thing, which was we had to consequence that group of students. And I'll never forget at graduation, which is my absolute number one favorite day of the year, standing up on stage and the whole group of 700 plus 800, whatever the number was, graduates, they all had a lapel pin with her picture as a way to honor her for not being there. And it was bittersweet, right? Because that was really hard as a school community. And I know to some people they may not understand that, but if you're a high school principal and you know how important graduation is and the valedictorian of the school to give that speech, it was a little bit heartbreaking. And so I share that story because that was a hard thing to do, to meet with her parents, to meet with her, to meet with the students who were so upset. But that's what we do in leadership roles. You have to hold that line and set that standard for behavior. And it's important. It's important to all the students that come in years after that, so they know how to make the right decisions. I think when I hear that question, some other things come to my mind. Times when I non-renewed teachers for not meeting standard, and just how heartbreaking those things can be. But when I think of just sheer unpopularity, that was the most unpopular decision I ever made.
Thank you.
How have you empowered employees to be independent thinkers while at the same time instilling in them a sense of accountability?
Well, I think this is a really important question, because we really want our staff to be independent thinkers. We want them to be, thinking creatively about how to attack problems and not to be afraid of being innovative and trying new things. So I think it's an important question. And I look back on the years I spent in Minnetonka. I talked about this culture of excellence and innovation that we were so committed to. And when teachers would submit ideas through our Big Hunt for Ideas, that platform that I talked about earlier, there was a lot of excitement. You can imagine. Teachers are suggesting things that are real passions of theirs, right? And we'd vote on them, and there was a lot of excitement. But there was accountability there as well, because any idea that we tested through that process, it had to meet a high threshold of efficacy. So it wasn't just if you were the top idea that idea was magically going to happen. It was subjected to the scientific process, right? We tested the ideas in a laboratory. Our goal was to invest as few dollars in an idea as possible before we could tell if it was, an idea that would work. So it was a very thorough process of testing the idea, challenging our assumptions, and making sure before we invested taxpayer dollars in an idea that we knew it was going to work. So I would say that I would see Stillwater as being a perfect environment for that kind of culture of excellence and innovation, where you want people to think independently, you want them to bring ideas forward, as long as they understand that it's got to be that every idea has to be held accountable to the data that shows it is working for kids. And if it's not working for kids, then we cannot invest our precious limited dollars in that kind of an idea. So it's a very fine line, but again, I point to the scientific process. We used it, I think, very effectively in Minnetonka. Every single major initiative that we took through to the board had been thoroughly vetted and tested with lots of data to show that it was going to work long before it saw the boardroom floor. So I know that that's a process that works, and I think Stillwater would be a perfect environment for that.
Thank you.
Okay. What steps do you take to see an innovative idea go from a concept to a reality?
Well, I've been talking about this just a little bit here. I'll go into a little bit more detail. The process that we used in Minnetonka that I firmly believe in is a process that's sometimes known as human-centered design or design thinking. And what you're doing in that kind of a process is you're really starting with empathy. So you have to really start with an understanding of what is the problem? What does it feel like to have this problem? And it's best if you can actually have people in the room who are experiencing the problem. So if you've got students who are struggling with something in the classroom, to actually have students present to talk about that experience. Because anybody who's solving that problem needs to understand what it feels like. And that's important. That's empathy. So the process starts with an empathetic view, and then you can move through the process of defining the problem, ideating around the problem, creating a prototype, testing, all that human-centered design that is so, I think, prevalent in a lot of very, very successful companies, is something that we can embrace as educators because it works in our environment too. And I've seen that work, and the power of co-creating with students, with staff, with community members, solutions to problems is so much more powerful than in a closed principal's office or a district leader's cabinet. It's powerful because when you have that kind of co-creation, co-design, then you have co-ownership. And everybody who's a part of that process now owns the solution. And that's where you see real commitment. And I don't know if there's a better way to take an idea from concept to reality than through that kind of process where you have broad stakeholder engagement, ownership of the idea. People actually, and it's authentic ownership. It's not just they sat in on a meeting. They actually can see their signature on the final blueprint. And that, to me, is the difference. And I've seen it work. We've used that over and over again. And there's a striking difference. I used to use this metaphor. I'd say, before I understood this process, I felt like leading change was like pulling people at the end of a rope, and when I became aware of human-centered design and how to use that to take ideas through the concept to reality, it changed the dynamic. I felt like I was water skiing, like someone's pulling me. Like as a leader, the organization, the people who are committed to this idea, they're the speedboat that's pulling you because they're so enthusiastic. I can't tell you how many times I would say to teams, we got to slow down a little bit. We're doing great, but we have to make sure everybody's keeping up with us. So it just changed my leadership dynamic from one to the other, and so that's just a little bit more about concept to reality. Taking innovative ideas, which again I feel like I've done over and over again especially my years in Minnetonka, and it's I think in my experience just a very, very effective way to do so.
Thank you.
All right, next question. How would you conduct an assessment of the school district's current curriculum and academic resources and its instructional programs and test scores?
Well, when I read the question, it gives a little bit the impression that that's an event. Whereas I would say what's happening here in this question is something that should be happening every day. And that's how I was trained as a leader. That's how I've behaved as a leader. Every day we're watching student performance and we're evaluating our academic programming. So, but to get to the spirit of the question here, I would say the way that I do this is I have a very deep understanding of all the data, all the achievement data within the school district, and not just snapshot data, but trend line data. So looking at years past, how have our reading scores trended from one building to the next, from one classroom to the next, from one teacher to the next. So having a deep understanding of all that data, and then meeting with principals, with leaders across the district, and talking about those particular metrics that are under their supervision, and having a very direct conversation about what my expectations are for where that trend line should be going. Where should that grade level be performing? And based on their past performances, there's predictive analysis we can do to show where they should be, and just having a very direct conversation with leaders about where each individual student, classroom, grade level should be at the end of the year, and then having a conversation about what resources are required to get there. That's a very, very specific conversation that should be happening with every leader on an ongoing basis. Student performance, academic achievement is our number one job, and that's, for me, that everyone needs to be laser focused on that outcome. Now, there are going to be disappointing moments where we don't meet our own expectations, but that just fuels the next conversation for why didn't we, and how do we reset and recalibrate our goal setting so that we have a better understanding of where our students should be. It's a very, to me, it's a, there's really two extremely important conversations that we have with school leaders. First one is about achievement, the second's about enrollment. And focusing on those very, very specifically throughout the year, I think is the way to have a very successful school district.
Great, thank you. And we've got 30 minutes.
How am I doing? Good, thank you. Thanks, Barb.
Describe a time when you wished you'd been more collaborative with others. What did you do and what did you learn?
That's a great question. I would say, all right, well, when I was, my first year as a high school principal, I was out in California, and one of the first things I noticed was freshmen were only required to take English and math. And coming from Minnesota, where we're so proud of our focus on education, and we have a much more rigorous set of graduation requirements, one of the first things I went to my superintendent and said, if we're going to really elevate academic achievement here, we've got to set a higher expectation for our ninth graders. They've got to come into the school with a focus on academic performance. And I said, 2 required core courses is not enough. So I advocated for adding science and social studies to the ninth grade required courses. And I was successful. There's another high school principal, superintendent. We worked together. We put together a recommendation to the board, and it was approved, which was phenomenal. But then we started to hear from the arts community and the choir and the band and everybody who saw that as a threat to their elective programs. And for someone who grew up with a passion for music, and the last thing I wanted to do was to communicate to our performing arts and visual arts communities that I didn't love what they were doing and support them. So I wished I'd been more collaborative. I wished that I had thought to bring in more stakeholders in that decision. Because I think if we did, we may have still gotten to the same outcome, but we might have done so in a more harmonious way. But we hit the pause button, we backed up, we had a number of meetings with our arts community, and we did just that. We came up with a clear understanding of how we would support our electives program. So that was a strong message to learn at a young age. I think I was 37. So I've aged a little bit since then, and I've learned about how to make sure you don't leave people out when you're making a big decision like that.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. School districts are responsible for providing a high-quality, equitable education for each and every student. What does an equitable education look like to you, and how will you lead with an equity lens?
Well, for me, an equitable education, for me, means that when I sit down and look at all of our subgroups as a school district, that everybody is outperforming expectation. That I can look and see trend lines all outperforming what we had expected for them. And that is a lot easier said than done. That is when you can actually see those kinds of results, it's the product of a lot of work. It's a lot of focus on the academic program. It's a lot of retooling. It's a lot of creating support programming where it's needed and missing. It's a lot of really studying student performance to try to understand why certain groups are struggling and getting close to those groups, like I talked about earlier, being close to those families and those communities to find out what are we missing. It's a lot of hard work to get to the point where you've got an equitable education for all students. And I don't know if there are a lot of school districts that would raise their hand and say, we've figured it out. When I was in California, I think I might have put this in my application, that they have a California Distinguished School Award that is specifically designed for schools that are closing the achievement gap. And we won that award in my last year as a principal, and it was a product of literally 6 years of rethinking and retooling the academic program so that everybody was achieving at levels beyond what the state would have expected. And so for me, it's a lifelong commitment to analyzing data, to being in and out of classrooms and really having a finger on the pulse of the instructional program, to know the teachers, the teacher leaders, to be in conversation with them, to be curious every day about why are we not hitting this marker? Why are we falling short here? What should we or could we be doing? How do we purpose our resources? What do we need to do differently? So it's a long-standing commitment to those questions that get you to hopefully to someday being able to say we have an equitable education. So, for me, that's what it's about. That experience in California, where we were awarded California Distinguished School, for me was an achievement for the staff. I mean, that was a chance for me to look to the staff and say, you guys did it. We spent so much time in my office ordering pizzas just to get a group of teachers to say, what's missing in world history? Why is our score falling below? And we changed the pacing guide. We'd move things around, and it was hard, but it works. And if you have that kind of attention to detail in the academic program, you will get results. Absolutely. So, and if you have an equity lens, and you know how to ask the right questions, you'll have the right conversations.
All right. Give us an example of when you took an innovative approach to solving an educational problem.
All right. Well, I have to say I love these questions because I have a passion for innovation, and I feel sometimes like that's my calling in education is to not to keep the chair warm, but to, how do we make a difference for kids? We have such a short amount of time in front of us, and and everything we do, it's so important for their futures, right? And so it's a passion of mine. So I'm thinking of a story, again, when I was in Minnetonka, and what was great about Minnetonka was the board was so supportive of this, right? I mean, and you all know, it's not easy to be in your chairs. When I was growing up, my dad was on the school board, so I watched it from an early age, and it's not easy to be in your chairs and to have to respond to the questions that come at you from the community, especially when it comes to innovation, because there's a certain element of risk when you're trying new things, right? But I think if it's done correctly and in a responsible way, then as school board members, you are protected because we've done the work ahead of time so that you can be confident that what we're bringing to you is going to succeed. Now, the story I'm thinking about is, before there was code.org and all the excitement around computer science, our school board challenged us to create a scope and sequence. And there were very few resources available to educators. Now there's a lot, which is fantastic. But there were very few back when we were doing this. I want to say it was 2011. And so what I did was I put out an all-call email to parents for anyone working in the software industry. If they would come in and meet with me and share with me their ideas for how we might build kind of backward map from college, because school districts didn't have a lot of programming. There are a couple of advanced placement courses that exist, but other than that, not much. So I put out an all-call, and it was very interesting what showed up. I had 60, maybe 70 parents that attended a meeting, and it was probably 95% dads, maybe higher, which says something about the software industry, right? It's very male-dominated. And all the more reason for why we needed to build a scope and sequence and introduce more girls to this possible career, right? So it was the right thing to do, but we had to take a very innovative approach because the curriculum didn't exist, right? It does now, which again, that's fantastic. But when we were doing this, it didn't. And so bringing all these parents together, and we met every other week for probably 2 months. And my favorite part of the story was that the dads would actually email me slide decks ahead of the meetings to say, use these slides they were very engaged in this conversation, and there was a lot of diverse opinions. And you might not imagine that, but they had very different ideas about how we should do it. We're talking about kindergarten, first, second, third grade curriculum. So we had to essentially build computer science for pre-readers. And now there's great programs like Codable, and I could list them all. There's fantastic programs now. But again, we're talking about 10, 11 years ago. So long story short, innovative approach was to reach out to the parent community because we didn't have the resources we needed as educators, and I knew the expertise was out there. So just a different way to build a scope and sequence. I would never build, English language arts that way or social studies, but computer science was a different story.
Thank you.
Describe ways you would help build public confidence in this school district. And I think you have 15 minutes left. Is that what I just saw?
Oh,
Okay.
thanks, Barb. Thank you. Well, I was sort of sitting in the cheap seats as you guys were closing elementaries, and so I watched from a distance, but I know, I don't know if there's anything harder that we do in public education than close an elementary, and you all closed 3. So I can't even pretend to imagine what it was like. But I think that, and then we've been through COVID, and we've wrestled with all the divisiveness of a pandemic. So I don't want to pretend to know exactly what it feels like to be here right now in Stillwater, but from where I sit, I feel like the best way to build confidence, public confidence in the school district is is to really set a path forward of really uniting this community. It's so geographically challenged, you know, and you all know that. I don't know if there's another district like Stillwater area that was at 25 miles top to bottom, and you're just changing demographics. It's an absolute case study for a challenging leadership scenario. And I'm really excited to have the opportunity to sit here and be a candidate for this job, because I think it's possible. I think that this is, you know, I know people in Stillwater. I've been in this community, the Twin Cities community. I know how amazing this part of the state is, and I believe that a superintendent who comes into Stillwater area and starts finding common ground and bringing different stakeholders to the table to talk about how we're better together, right? I mean, to me, that would be the theme in Stillwater, is we are better together. And it's an amazing place, but we've got to be unified. We've got to be united in our vision for what's best for kids. And so, I think being visible, being approachable, being relatable, having an understanding of what's possible. I feel like the experience I had in Minnetonka, the culture of excellence and innovation, we really believed every day that our kids could do anything. And it was uplifting. It was not just a bumper sticker. It was something we believed. And that's the kind of message that brings a community together. This is about our kids. They can do anything if we give them the path to achieve their dreams. And it starts at the top from the board and the superintendent. It's about us having a vision forward of how we bring the diverse communities here together. But I think 5-10 years down the road, there's no reason why this couldn't be that kind of a district. I saw on niche.com or whatever it was that they have Stillwater listed as 30-something district in the state, and I thought, that's not where Stillwater should be. Minnetonka, number 1, Wayzata, Edina, that's fine. But Stillwater needs to be in that conversation. Stillwater should be in the top 5, not somewhere 30, 35. I really think this community is ready for that kind of commitment to kids, commitment to excellence, commitment to the future that can only happen if this district comes together under a shared vision and people get excited about it and believe in it. I think it's really possible. And I'm here because I'm excited about it. I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and the last question is really your questions for us. So you have, I think, 15 minutes? Great.
All right. Well, this process is, you've all been reading applications and paperwork from all the candidates, so you've been doing your homework, and obviously we've been doing ours. I've studied the profile that you all have published, and I've looked over the survey from the community. I guess what I'd be really interested in hearing from each of you is, if you look at all of what's been presented to us as candidates, what's the one thing that really stands out for you personally when you're looking at the candidate pool and you're thinking about, what's that one skill or characteristic or quality that for you is really the most important? So that's the question I would ask of you all.
Who wants to start?
I think for me, it will be someone who doesn't tell us the same, because the same will keep us where we are. Someone who is creative, who thinks outside of the box and is bringing new ideas, visionary ideas that are not necessarily what has always been done. So for me, that's what I'm looking for.
Great, thank you.
I would say, it's similar to what Director Porbini has said. I I feel too that this is a district with tremendous opportunity, and we have the best teachers in the state here, and I feel as you do that we ought to be part of that conversation as well, and I feel as though we need to have strong leadership to take those incredible teachers and create more opportunity for students and better results for those students. And I, collaboration is mixed in with that as well, but that sort of visionary leadership to help lead, the immense resources that we have in this district to a better spot.
If I could just add, you made me think of something. In all the innovation that I was engaged in Minnetonka, the key to it was teacher leadership. Absolutely every single time. And I could tell story after story, but it was those folks would surface from the teacher group who had the energy and the passion for an idea. And that was the secret to our success. So I absolutely agree. It comes from the frontline team. Thanks.
Sure. So, Stillwater excels in many things, and that's not just unified basketball beating Minnetonka in the state championship, but in lots of things. So, but we'd like to see all of our students kind of feel part of that excellence, that they're part of those things that excel, whether it's athletics or the academics or any program. So we just want to identify those that just aren't kind of feeling that they're part of that excellence and bring them up there so that they participate.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you.
I think the Stillwater community, it has this wide diversity of location and towns and north and south, and then we had the schools that closed. And I think our community is kind of fractured. And I think we really need to connect the wider community and businesses with the schools in a more symbiotic way, so they really interconnect better and support each other better. I think, businesses say, oh, we don't have enough people to hire, and then we have kids who don't have jobs. And I just think we somehow need to connect things better and make it less fractured.
If I could, just briefly, that was one of the amazing sort of byproducts of the Vantage program. It was about bringing in, community business people to talk with the students as a part of the curriculum, and it was this very kind of serendipitous way of we really built this nexus with the business community, and before we knew it, we had all the local businesses in and out of our classrooms, and we just had never built the on-ramp for them, and that became the on-ramp, and it led to a lot of other opportunities, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, I'll go next. I think one thing that is kind of emerging for me in looking at the candidates is valuing somebody who comes in with experience and is going to kind of emanate a stability that unfortunately has been lacking a little bit in recent years. That we really, I feel like we have really, somebody else had mentioned this earlier, we have really good bones in this district, and I totally agree with that. But kind of having someone who understands, recognizing the value that we do have here in our students, in our staff, in our community, in the programs that we have, and looking for how to enhance that, but also not upend it with too much innovation. So kind of finding that middle ground of bringing people along while making us even better than we thought we could be.
Yeah, thank you for that. It really does require an attention to what the organization has the capacity to support when it comes to innovation. You have to be very cautious about overwhelming the organization. So I've definitely seen that, and I agree. So thank you for that.
And I mean, I honestly, I can't add very much. I think everyone covered almost everything that I could possibly think of. But I guess I would go back to that, the planning, having someone in the leadership position that is going to have a holistic view of everything, and how to kind of just create that plan. Not only, you know, what we're going to do this year, but what we're going to do 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, because you don't get to, you know, overnight to, you know, the end goal. It's kind of having really fostering a culture of positivity and inclusiveness for everyone, and just making everyone feel like they're a part of where we're going to be going. But I think sometimes because we've had some turnover in the top position, people wonder, where are we going?
Right.
And, you know, and so we have a new board, and we're looking for a new superintendent, a permanent superintendent here. And so it's like, where are we going? And then communicating that, and then creating that actionable plan to get there. And I think it involves everything everyone said here. But I think even just going at the more basic, fundamental level of what we need, it starts with, you know, a healthy relationship within the board and with the administration and within the community, and telling that story. It's kind of everything everyone said here.
Yeah.
Amazing opportunities, but lots of work, lots of good work to do.
Yeah. No, and again, you know, I talked about sort of watching Stillwater from afar, and seeing the you know, turnover of superintendents, and I think, you know, that's got to be a concern for you all and for the community. You want someone who can bring stability. I've heard both of you say that now, and I just want to say that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a place. I'm probably not the youngest candidate you're interviewing. I'm 56. I can share that, and I know I'm not required to, but I have a strong passion for this work, and this is a phenomenal community. And I think, you know, what you need is someone to come in who's ready to do 10 or 15 years of leadership. And again, it's, you know, the plan, as you describe it, for me, it's not a 3 or a 5-year plan. It's a 10, 15, 20-year plan. In Minnetonka, we used to kind of quietly talk about the secret formula, right? And there really is one. But it was not something we would talk about publicly, but it was really a very careful approach to how we built a culture of excellence. And, you know, it is not something that happens overnight. So it's got to have a long-term vision, and it really requires that, you know, harmony between the superintendent and the leadership team and the board. And it's not easy to achieve, and very few school districts can say they've actually landed there. But it's the right aspiration, you know, and it is, you know, I think, again, because I've had that experience in Minnetonka, I know what that looks like. And I think it is, I see absolutely all the bones, all the ingredients are here. It's just a matter of finding the right leadership, you know, arrangement here. And I'm really excited for you all, because I think you are on the right path. So, you know, I don't have any more questions, so I'm going to stop there, and I'm just going to say how much I've appreciated the opportunity to be here. I think it's an exciting opportunity. I feel that there's a strong fit between what you're looking for and the skills that I bring. I hope you agree, and I hope you give me a chance to come back and talk more about the job.
Thank you so much. Thanks. I think that's it. It's so nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you all. I'll do a quick.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. You bet.
Pete. Rub the salt into it. Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thank you so much.
It's a handy reference, you know.
That was a nice one. Very nice.
Oh, it compliments you in your seconds.
Very sweet.
sure. We're good? Okay. Do we need to do introductions? Hello. Thank you for coming out late on a Tuesday. Not like you don't put in a full day. Right? Okay, let's go through this process. So welcome, thank you. We are going to be rotating, asking questions. And then you'll see that we're gonna be taking notes and we're listening intently. We're just might be looking down and jotting some notes down. There are 13 questions in total, and you'll have an hour. And Barb will be holding cue cards up as time is expiring. So 30 minutes, 15, and then 5. Our last question will be questions you have for us. So that's the last question. And I don't think we need to go around the room, do we? I don't think we need to, so we'll skip that. Can I skip that? I think we can skip that. Okay, great. So we'll get right into the questions. Number 1, tell us about yourself and why you are interested in becoming the Stillwater Area Public School Superintendent.
Okay, let me give you a little bit of my background and experience. I don't know that all of you know everything that I've been through. This is, I think, a little over 30 years in education. Started out in Utah, and my college, Weber State University, graduated in elementary ed with a social science specialty degree, and then I went back for my master's in curriculum and instruction. I also picked up a gifted and talented license for teaching gifted students, which we did not have in Minnesota when I first moved here. Also went back to school and picked up my birth through 3 for my early childhood so I could teach kindergarten and preschool. Later on, when I moved here, I went through back there, I started at Utah State University and picked up my principal's license, my admin K through 12. And then when I came here, I spent 2 years at the University of Minnesota in the Principals Academy. It's a nationally certified program, and that was wonderful with principals from across our state. Then I went to St. Mary's and picked up my superintendent's license, and currently I have been accepted into the Educational Leadership Doctoral Program at St. Mary's. So that's kind of my schooling and background. My teaching experience started in Utah at Adams Elementary. I was 2 of 10 student teachers that were picked up that year after my student teaching experience. It was on an extended day schedule, so we had a shift of students coming in the morning and a shift of students coming in the afternoon, and they rotated like a middle school model. The teachers worked closer to 9.5 hours a day, and they received a difference in pay for that, and that lasted a couple of years. Then we transitioned to a year-round model, and I was on year-round for probably 12, 13 years, and we had 4 tracks, 5 tracks. We would teach 9 weeks and off for 3. After being at Adams Elementary, where I taught 2nd grade and 4th grade, I had a unique opportunity to open up a brand new elementary school, Windridge Elementary, and the principal happened to be my former 1st grade teacher, Ms. Bone. And so had about 1,000 students at that elementary school and not one school bus. They all lived within a mile of the school, a lot of starter homes and a lot of parent support there. After teaching 3rd grade, 4th grade there, I had another opportunity to open up another new school, Bluff Ridge Elementary, and it had a little over 1,000 students there, and it was growing. We were on year-round. Kindergarten had 8 sections at the school. 2 years later, we had 16 sections of kindergarten and 22 portables. So we were constantly going through boundary changes and trying not to overbuild the schools before a population bubble would go through, and then we would have empty schools. So we really had to be careful with that. I was asked then to step up and be an assistant principal at another brand new school that they built. And this was Creekside Elementary, and it was the largest elementary school in the state of Utah with about 1,450 students. Very unique demographics. They had a women's and children's shelter, we had trailer courts, and we had multi-million-dollar homes there. After that, I happened to want to be a mom for a while. I have 5 children, so and my husband switched airlines. He was a pilot for Northwest, switched to Delta. We wanted him home more, and I wanted to be home with my kids for a while, so I took 6 years off, and we transitioned to Minnesota. At that time, I wanted to jump back into this because this is my passion. I was picked up at Lily Lake Elementary, spent 5 years there, and then was asked to work in our curriculum department and be a principal part-time at Anderson Elementary. So part-time principal, part-time curriculum. The curriculum I had oversight of 21st century learning, STEAM, and school choice. I did that for a year, and then I was asked to serve as an executive director, which is the equivalent of an assistant superintendent. So I had oversight of at that time, all of the elementary schools, special ed, teaching and learning, community ed, the ALC, and early childhood, and the technology department. Worked on that for 2 years, and we were successful with a referendum of bond during that time. And then we had a transition in leadership. So I went back to Lily Lake Elementary for a year. Was happy there, but then I was asked to show up at the district office one day, and they said, we want your help. We need you to bring communities together and support kids. We are closing down 2 schools. So at that time, I spent the last year at Marine Elementary School and Withrow Elementary School. Where my goal was to support the students to have the best year possible and to support the adults that were supporting them. So fell in love with the communities there and the people there, and that was a really tough experience, but it was also wonderful too. And then I ended up at Afton Lakeland Elementary for 3 years, and then was asked to step into this role. We had a lot going on, a lot of change, and wanted to work together with the communities. So I did take this role for a year. I was offered a 3-year contract after that, but this is a community job. I am a servant leader, and this needs to be a community process with the school board. This is the biggest decision that you make. So I took a 1-year contract instead, and here I am. Okay. And why Stillwater? I'm a pony. And so I've been around to, as you can tell, a number of schools. We are 8,300 students, 65,000 community members. We have multiple school sites. We are a diverse community. We are becoming more and more diverse. We have different perspectives, different needs. And I think it's as simple as what is my why? It used to be just the kids, but I've learned over time we're here for the kids, and we are here for the adults that are supporting the kids. That's staff, families, and the community. And we make a promise to our kids each and every day when we walk through the doors, and that is to get to know them, their individuality, their uniqueness, their strengths, their potentials, and we are going to make that promise, which guides all of our other decisions. We are going to support them with their academic achievement. We are going to support them with their social emotional needs. Equity is our North Star. And when they graduate from an excellent district, which we can continue to define and transcend the definition of excellence, they can determine their own future with what they have from our district. So that's kind of the why. We have a lot to do here.
Great, thank you.
Next question. How would you develop authentic and enduring partnerships with various district stakeholder groups to support the achievement of all students?
Okay, I'm going to flip here. So partnerships, let me read it one more time. Enduring partnerships, various district stakeholders and groups to support achievement. I think it's all about relationships, and you need to build trust. Any position that I've walked into, you have to earn that trust. You have to be visible, you have to be transparent, you have to hold people accountable, you have to be supportive and collaborative. For an example of that, I will go with this past referendum. Coming into this, we had a lot of different opinions. We have had a lot of change, and that was a community decision. So with that, we had a timeline. We did some backwards planning. We met together and we collaborated. And then we went out and we were visible and we shared our communication and our information and the why we were going out for the referendum. What would this do for our children? We met with community members. Well, I ended up attending 90 plus meetings within the community. And so it's bringing stakeholders together, city council meetings, staff meetings, employee group meetings, parent group meetings, retirement homes, businesses, the chamber, Rotary groups, Kiwanis, you name it. We were out there sharing our story and the why for our children and what this would mean. And then it was a community decision. But it's about being visible and sharing what we can do with that. And it was based on data, and it was based on what we would do to support students so they could succeed within our community. It was a group effort. Okay?
Great, thank you.
What are your beliefs about building effective leadership teams? How have you implemented those beliefs, and what strategies have you used to provide general oversight of all other school district personnel?
Okay. First off, developing leadership teams. We have had a lot of change when I stepped into this position. We have had to stabilize our leadership teams. We've had to hire a finance director, a director of operations, new HR director, new teaching and learning director, a new data coordinator, and we're working on teaching and learning. So a lot of change. So I've had to work with everybody to stabilize that so we can become a cohesive, collaborative team. And with putting kids first, building that team, we want a safe environment, we want clear expectations, we need resources and support, clear communication, feedback. We meet weekly for at least 3 hours. We share calendars. We get to know each other personally and professionally because we put in long hours, and we need to be able to support each other. We want to be visible within the school community and connected with students. Right now, we have a shortage of staff or subs, so at our central services building, each morning we put out there, hey, if you can be at Brookview and a para during lunchtime, or can you help at Lake Elmo during recess? And so they are out there connecting with our schools and our community. And again, during the referendum, we were out there in every kind of group to meet. Have we implemented those beliefs and strategies you've used to oversight for all other school district personnel? We have been meeting with employee groups during COVID. We met via Zoom with our food and nutrition, with our paras, with our tech support, with our custodians and engineers, with our paraprofessionals, and just trying to lean in and listen and to make sure that we were engaged and knew what they needed, their support and resources to be successful during a very challenging and complex time, and to provide as much support as we could for our staff. We also hold people accountable. We do evaluations. Right now with staff, we do have instructional coach. We have wonderful building administrators that provide check-ins, as well as our district leadership team. And you hire well, and you need to learn how to delegate and trust, and again, support, and encourage, and then celebrate your successes. Sometimes we forget to celebrate what we do well, and we need to be able to take calculated risks. I've worked in an environment that didn't feel safe, and it's hard to get the best possible solution when people cannot share ideas and take some calculated risks based on what's best for kids. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. My question out of the way here. Right. tell us about a time when you thought of a better way to do something in education.
A way to do something. I've had some experience with that. A number of years ago, we were able to, a few of us go back to Harvard and participate in a global think tank course, which gave us a lot of background, and also had the opportunity to go to, it was with the former board director, Tom Lehman, and some staff to Cupertino, California, with the Apple headquarters, and then to Stanford to visit the design school. And that is a space where they are very innovative and creative. That's where maker spaces come from. And they work together and launch businesses from around the world. And we have some staff that are still trained, some of our instructional coaches, some of our district leadership team in the design way of thinking. And it's kind of a process where you work together to have empathy towards the problems, try and research, and then you define the problem with what you have. You share ideas, generate ideas, and then you go out and test the ideas and assess them to see if they'll work. We've done this, Better Way in Education, we've done this at Afton Lakeland with students. 5th grade students came together. We found out that there was a problem with, they came up with biggest problem, bathrooms and lunch boxes and what to do with them. They generated ideas. We ended up putting hooks in the bathrooms, and the kids did that on their own. I'm trying to think of what we've done. We've taken this where we share ideas. We've had safety issues at the high school with lockdowns this year, and I believe had a former superintendent, Tom Nelson, where you go back, you debrief and you empathize and you reflect on your issues. We took our first lockdown at the high school this year. It was tense and it was tough. So we debriefed, we brainstormed, we found out what are our issues. We had some communication glitches. We had some follow-up issues, some connections with our local support. So we went back and we held a community meeting. We debriefed with our local authorities and our staff. We now have better communication templates. We're now, just as a couple of weeks ago, sending in text messages, allowing students to have text messages with accurate information. And the local authorities, I was just at a community meeting in Woodbury a couple of weekends ago, and one of the Washington County Sheriff Department officers said, you know what, from what we've done with your district and what we've learned, we just had an incident in South Washington County and it went so much better. So it's that process of continually trying to problem solve and then test it and assess it.
Thank you.
What has been the most unpopular decision you've had to make? How did you handle the reaction to this decision?
That might have been most of last year with a pandemic. Masking, quarantines, learning models. I'll go with the pandemic in general and trying to decide if we're in school or out of school. With masking or not. Everything about that was unpopular, and it was tough. It was very divided, and just very fortunate to be with a wonderful leadership team that really came together and said, we are going to stick with the data. We are going to lean in and do this with humility. We are going to listen to people. We are going to collaborate, but we are going to stick with the data. We did have a lot of meetings. We had a COVID solutions group with our teachers that we'd meet with almost weekly to hear what information that we needed to pay attention to, what issues they were having, what was working, what wasn't working. We need to be flexible. We need to be able to, I think of the Friends show Pivot with the couch scene. We have to pivot, pivot, pivot. And we ended up working with people from Lakeview Hospital, Washington County Health Department, Chris Keller, our epidemiologist, MDE. We had a panel there where we would collaborate as well. Bianca led that. She's now a school board member, I just found out too. So it was really unpopular. We could not please everybody, but we had to stay the course and put kids first. What is best for kids? And all parents want to know that their children are safe even before they want to know that they're learning and achieving. So constant connections, constant communication, and owning the decisions that we made. So let me make sure I've answered all of that. Okay.
Thank you.
How have you empowered employees to be independent thinkers while at the same time instilling in them a sense of accountability? Okay. First, you hire well, and if you're not hiring people and they're there, you need to make sure that you're supporting them and giving them the resources, feedback, encouragement that they need so they can be successful. I believe you don't walk into a place and hire everybody new, so you need to focus on what are people's strengths and what can they do to contribute and always keep kids. I'm going to keep bringing up kids. I don't want to forget kids because this is our why, but what is best for kids? For people to be able to work together, they need stabilized leadership, which we have a wonderful team right now. We have people that really care about our kids, all of our staff. That's one of our, when we send out surveys, we know that people value our teachers. And then we need to have a stabilized funding in which we were able to do very fortunately with our referendums, so we can have sustainability and we can support people with systems and our vision and our mission and our goals. So how do we empower them? We want a safe environment for them. We want to encourage them. We want to motivate them. We want to listen to people. We want to hear people. We want to collaborate. We want to communicate. And I'm very fortunate to have a team that is very good at communicating, but it's learning how do we connect with the community and how do we connect with families? How do we connect with our students? How do we have that two-way communication so we're hearing and have student voice, family voice, community voice, and staff voice? How is it two-way and coming together to support all kids, each child? Okay. I think I mentioned we do assess, we do evaluate, we do coach. Instructional coaches, I was here the first year that we implemented that. That's embedded PD, so they're receiving support and feedback with their job as well, and assessing what we do to support them. Okay?
Thank you.
All right. What steps do you take to see an innovative idea go from concept to reality?
Go back to that way of design thinking. You're going to have empathy and research what supports are needed or what the problem is. Then you're going to really define the problem. You are going to brainstorm, ideate prototypes, build it, and then test it. So let's see. So steps it would take for an innovative idea to go from concept to reality. One of the most innovative ideas that we've had, it was right after we visited the design school. We wanted to try, we had Wayne Feller here, he's a former tech person. We had an innovative technology and innovation center, and we wanted to try some things differently. We heard teachers, they did not have enough time to spend with students in the classroom. we looked at math. And they wanted more time with them, so we looked into flipped math. That was having teachers make videos of their teaching content and instruction and would send that home almost as a homework assignment. So we tried this pilot district-wide with teachers across the district. We ran that through. We found out that teachers would have more time to connect with students. Students and parents weren't as frustrated, but it took resources and we had a leadership change. When we were full force with that, we ended up hosting the very first national flipped conference. We also tried this with professional development with teachers where they would watch a video at home and then we could work together and accomplish, we had more action plans during our professional development time. But again, for things to be innovative, you need the sustainable leadership and you need a sustainable resource. And so moving forward with that innovation, I think we are really set and can build momentum with our tech levy that we just passed, our capital projects tech levy. We now have hopefully funding for that to where we can have students learning anywhere, anytime, and really excited to try and move that forward and have it sustainable.
Thank you.
We have 30 minutes left for the next question. Well, more than just this question. How would you conduct an assessment of the school district's current curriculum and academic resources and its instructional programs and test scores?
Okay. We are doing that right now. So, let's see. You would start with school board goals, which is at the top. Underneath that, you have the world's best workforce, which is required by the Minnesota Department of Education. We have portrait of a graduate, which I was an executive leader here when that first started. Then we have our strategic plan with our mission and our vision. We have an operational plan with action steps, and then we bring that down to the school improvement plans. But within that, we are updating our operational plan right now, and it's all about the kids. And it goes back to what supports our kids, what's our promise to kids. Right now, we are going to be proposing learning for life, and we have two anchors. It's achievement and then connections. It's the social emotional support, it's the financial support, it's the tech support. Achievement, we're focusing on early literacy, balanced, enhanced instruction, and then it's the supports around kids with the multi-tiered systems, our professional learning communities. We had the unique opportunity to increase our QCOM, so we now have $850,000 to support professional development embedded with our instructional coaches, and we will have professional learning community leads. So what this is, when we're looking at assessing our curriculum and instruction, it's a continuous improvement cycle. And within that, we have, it's not curriculum review. I would say it's, because those are resources that you use, it's more of an instructional review. And if our Director of Teaching and Learning was here, he could explain it better than me, but it's continuous improvement. And within that, you're moving circles with your PLCs, your MTSS, and your tiers of intervention or acceleration. And you have, when you're meeting and looking at the data with your professional learning communities, you are saying what's missing, what's missing. We have, right here, we're looking at studying and evaluating what we're doing. We are looking at our standards. We're trying to align our systems and making those decisions. Right now, we are focusing on literacy, and within that cycle of continuous improvement with Teachers College, it's a balanced literacy program, and it's wonderful. But within that, we found in our PLCs and assessing our needs, we needed more. So we've added letters training for interventionists and our instructional coaches, and that's through an MDE grant. We found out our little ones in kindergarten, first, second, we needed more of a phonics base. We added Letterland. So that's continually assessing how we're doing with our instruction. And then also, right here for accountability, this was, first year we did this with World's Best Workforce. This is our accountability with our A reading, our A math assessments. This is our ACT. These are all of our assessments to make sure that what we're doing is working. And then we make adjustments from there.
Great, thank you.
Describe a time when you wished you'd been more collaborative with others. What did you do and what did you learn?
Okay, more collaborative with others. I think there's when I was an executive director, we were going through budget cuts, and they were big budget cuts. We had to move in a very fast manner. I was given the task to work with the ALC, our alternative learning program, and make some big cuts. I did not have the time to be as collaborative as what I wanted to be. A decision was made that we could bring in 916. We are a member district for 916, and to save money, we could have them come in and facilitate and have oversight of our ALC. But with that, it meant a lot of change. It meant schedule changes, it meant staff changes, it meant class changes, and for our group of students in that program, change is a pretty darn big deal, and it's tough. So it caused a lot of upheaval, it caused a lot of feelings, it caused a lot of conflict, and with the time frame that I was on, all I could do is lean into it and offer a lot of meetings to hear our families, our staff, and our students. It was tough because it could have been done better. I learned a lot with that. I don't think I'll ever forget that. And they did have oversight of it, but it changed after that, and I was back in the building when it changed back. But what I did learn from that is you need to be proactive rather than reactive. You need to have clear communication, and you need to hear all stakeholders and give time for process and for flexibility during situations. So that's probably one of the biggies. It bothered me to not do a better job. Okay.
All right. School districts are responsible for providing a high-quality, equitable education for each and every student. What does an equitable education look like to you, and how will you lead with an equity lens?
Okay. We should never apologize for equity. It's what we do, and I'll say it again, equity is our North Star. We should be up on the mountaintop shouting about it. An equitable education, it's not just about programs, it's not just about systems, it's not just about how we do things, it's about each and every individual child. And I'll say it again, it's about the kids, it's about knowing them individually, it's knowing about their perspectives, it's knowing about their potential, and it's knowing about the opportunities and access that we can provide them. It's about closing the achievement gap, and it's about closing the opportunity gap, and we need to hit that hard. Coming out of the pandemic, I think we need to even hit it harder than we've ever hit it before. When I first walked into this position, right before I came in, there was and I keep it with me, a letter written by our BIPOC students, and I believe maybe some alumni. And we have a long list of work to do. They had concerns about a lot of things, and I think we've been able to work on, we've been able to make progress, but I think we have a lot more to do. And it's about hiring a more diverse staff. It's about supporting in here more mental health supports. There's racial trauma that we need to support, which we are supporting trauma-informed instruction and PD with our staff. It's about the expansion of Brookview Elementary, which we were able to do because our southern end of our district is becoming more diverse. Just participated in a Woodbury community meeting a couple of Saturdays ago on racial equity, inclusion, and it was really interesting. The Census Bureau in 2000, our Woodbury residents, we had 10% residents of color. In 2010, it was 20%. In 2020, it's 30%, but also it is now 18 and under 40% students of color. Our demographics are changing throughout our district. It's 35 miles long, but especially fast down on our southern end, so we need to be aware of that. We've hired a cultural liaison. That was asked for. We have started reviewing our curriculum with Dr. Keith Mays out of the University of Minnesota. We want it culturally responsive. We started with social studies and literacy at the high school. But what does an equity education look like? It's if you talk to Paula Forbes, she's been here. We've brought her in for the school board and students. It's a constitutional right to, I would say, more than adequate education for all. With Paula Forbes, she was one of the founders of Reimagine Minnesota, that we have our Reimagine Stillwater. It's about see all, serve all, support all. So see all is a safe and welcoming environment. Serve all is personalized instruction. And support all is the equitable resources. And that's another thing we need to be doing is lobbying with the legislature for equitable resources for all. Within that, we have a mindset and a heart set, but what we have found out, we need a skill set. We start off with some YMCA training. We have had Humanize My Hoodie. We have had No More Next Time. But we have staff and students every day struggling with overt microaggressions. There's bigotry, there's a lot of behaviors, and we need to, as our last training would say, we need to interrupt and disrupt our systems. We need to question, we need to listen, we need to educate, and then we need to echo. We need to support others that are supporting this work too. And we need to roll up our sleeves and jump into it. Within the Reimagine Minnesota, it goes back to what our students are asking for. It's the staffing diversity, which we're about at 3%, and our students are closer to 30-something%. It's not reflective. It's about the professional development. It's about the mental health, social emotional support. Our students, we've had, they wanted more voice. We've held 2 Voices of Change conferences. We just heard from student leaders. Our discipline matrix and the support, it needs to be more restorative for our victims, and we need to educate our students that are making some choices that they shouldn't. So, a lot there. I'm passionate about equity, sorry.
Thank you.
All right. Give us an example of when you took an innovative approach to solving an educational problem.
Okay. I've talked about that a little bit before. We've had to be, during a pandemic, innovative with just about everything we've done. We had to access, I would say, every single department, from touch point cleaning with our, and this is a we, it's been a team effort. Touch point cleaning, how we walk kids down the hall, how we do recess differently, how we do lunch differently, how we serve food differently, how we bring food to students, how we get supplies to students. We've had to, health office, how we communicate with parents differently, technology, how we remove barriers with hotspots and devices, and we found used devices. We run and make trips to homes, innovative. I'm thinking our online students with this pandemic, we had about 150 students when we returned to school that still wanted to stay in online, and again, it's about the kids and supporting all kids. We were able to work with the school board, and we had some CARES ESSER COVID funding, so we were able to take some of our distance learning teachers and provide a first semester online program for them, which was quite innovative. We couldn't sustain it after the first semester because more students were back in school. We didn't have as big of an interest. We have about 40 students now, which I would still say is pretty innovative. We problem solved, we had empathy, we listened. We are now partnering with Minnetonka School District, a Tonka online program, and running a tuition fee to support students that way innovatively. First semester they are online, and it's different than the first semester, but we're still trying to support students and do things differently. And I think with the pandemic, that might be the silver lining, is we have to be innovative now, we have to be flexible, and we have to think outside of our box. Okay.
Thank you.
Describe ways you would help build public confidence in this school district. And you have 15 minutes left. Okay. And that might be my last question, right? So, okay. It's all, I'm going to go back to its relationships. It's trust. It's bringing people together. It's leaning in. It's doing it with humility. It's doing it with endurance. And again, our district is complex. It's really hard to know. We need to differentiate to meet needs from the north end to the south end, 35 miles long, and it's continually changing. We have different perspectives, we have different views, and guess what? That's okay. Every community, every school that I've been in, I fall in love with them, and it goes back to what's best for our kids, and it is a community effort. It's about being visible, it's about being transparent, it's about being fiscally responsible. We have more than $120 million budget, and it's a lot of things up in the air moving around. We've had 4 changes back and forth with our finance department, and we've still had enough transparency and accountability that we came out with a clean audit without findings this last time. That's pretty amazing with all of the changes, and that's a team effort. It's a we. That's how you build trust. This last referendum, when we went around to the community, the big message here is you are trusting us to do the right thing by our students, and that was to stabilize our budget, to continue the supports. And the first day you start promoting your next referendum is the day after the last referendum. And it's accountability and showing the community what you are doing with what you have. And then it goes back to our simple promise to our kids. What are we doing for our kids? It's getting to know them individually, personally. It's celebrating their successes, and it's continuously trying to do better for them. It's we are a great district. We have a strong music program, we have a strong athletic program, we have a lot of staff support, passionate staff, family support, community support. But we're in tough times, and I'm going to say that achievement, we've heard from our community that our achievement, especially after a pandemic, we need to lean into that, and we need to hit that hard. We need to attack it and not give up on it. And with that, we hear from our community and our staff and our families. with the pandemic, the social, emotional, and mental health support. We need to jump on that and have a strong resolve that we are going to continue to support our kids for that promise that we make so they can be a Stillwater graduate. And I go back to graduation and being in, when you work so hard and you see these kids and the last graduation standing up in front of a sea of red ponies, and a lot of them I had as kindergarten students, and seeing what we've been able to do, that's kind of the why, and all the families and the staff supporting them. That's our why.
Thank you.
Okay, last question is, what questions do you have for us, if you have any?
I do have a couple.
Okay, great.
What is your vision for the future of our district?
I think I'm. I
You want to start? Sure.
All right. I have always said it. I want a situation where they say charity begins at home. And as a district, somebody said we have the bones. It's true. We have great teachers here, great staff. But our kids compete with the world. Our kids don't just compete right here in Stillwater or in the district as a whole or in Woodbury. It's beyond that. I want us to be the very best right here, competing with the ones that are around us. And improving that process will also lead us to see beyond our capabilities as the way we are right now. Regardless of what it is, whether it's the academic track, whether it's the vocational educational track, whether it's the military track, but the notion of being the very best and putting that out to our kids and providing the necessary support so they're able to compete in every aspect of any profession in terms of where they find themselves is important to me. We have to grow. We're number 35 in the state of Minnesota right now. We're about 1,175 nationally. We are, compared to the schools around us, including Hastings, we're a step behind Hastings. I'm not saying Hastings is bad, but I think we can do better than that. And so for me, that academic excellence, not only in education, but also in every aspect of how we perform or what we do, whether it's from staff to the students in the ALC program or any other programs that we have. Personally, I want to see us grow in that area. And that includes closing up the achievement gaps as well.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Sure. I'm going to echo, I wanted to go next just because I'm echoing a lot of what you just said there, and we actually looked at those charts a little bit ago. We are near the top of the district, but we are not at the top. So let's just keep working our way up. Let's just keep going there. We excel in so many things, but let's make sure we bring everybody along. You know, the 8,000 some students, let's make sure all of those feel like they're part of that excellence that Annie's talking about and I'm referring to.
I'll jump in.
Yeah.
In terms of my vision for our district going forward, and I think just in general in education, what I really, I believe our kids really need to be prepared for the current challenges of our present world and how much our world is shifting in very fundamental ways. And coming out of the pandemic, things are different, and we need to seize on this moment and really redefine how we are assessing our kids and what success for our kids really is going to look like in terms of what they can do in the future world that is unfolding before us. So for me, I'm really forward facing and trying to figure out how we're going to navigate this and how are we going to teach our kids to almost be more internally strong and rely on those resources and hopefully unlock a passion in our kids to really continue to build themselves into the best characters they can so they can navigate an uncharted world as it's unfolding.
Anyone else?
Well, I will jump in. All of these things that have been said, I think are really powerful and true and necessary. It feels to me like we have struggled in recent years, most primarily just because we have not had as much, continuity and leadership as we should have had. We were distracted by the consolidations of the schools, and then we had leadership changes, and we need to get back to focusing on what is most important, and that is the achievement of students. And I love the concept of individualized instruction, because that is what helps bring equity forward too, because some students might need a little bit more to fill in the gaps than other students might. But I do think that the first goal is to get that stability back in our district, that stability of leadership, so that we can go forward to do the work that we know we have to do. And so that's my vision of the near future in terms of what we need to do.
Thank you. Vivian, did you have anything to add? No? Yeah, I mean, everyone states it really well here. I think for me, I have like a short-term vision and a midterm vision and a long-term vision, and I think that sometimes we can get caught up in wanting to get to the long-term vision or even the midterm vision before we've really addressed the short-term vision. And so for me, it's like, of course, it's achievement. It's, making sure that all of our kids have everything they need to be the best them they can be. But I think in the short term, we have a lot of work to do, both as a board, as a staff group, as administrators, as a community. We need to rally together because individually, I think we all say the why is the kids. But I think collectively, we need to behave in a manner that demonstrates that. And so my vision in the short term is, how can we come together to really, all of us, remember the why in our behaviors and our actions and the way that we treat one another. And that's kind of my short-term vision, is like, how can we find that leadership that's going to move us forward and put us on a plan to achieve where I want to be in that midterm and long-term area. I totally agree on the achievement. I think that maybe I want to celebrate a little bit more growth along the way. I don't think we're going to get from A to Z or where we are. And so how do we get there in a way that we can all feel good about what we're doing, and that our students feel still relaxed? I mean, still healthy and not stressed. And so how do we do what's best for them in a way that isn't going to be harmful to them? I don't know. So I know we talk a lot about achievement, but I just want to put it in context. And so I guess my vision is, how do we have this short-term vision, the midterm and the long-term? And then if we can keep that focus, I think we can go really great places. So that stability is key, right? Whenever you have that change and that lack of stability, it changes everything. It changes the short-term, the midterm, and the long-term. So sorry, I'm rambling, but.
I guess I have something. I think we really need to improve our assessments and building of strengths of our elementary students, so that we don't have the problems in reading because we've assessed them earlier than when they get to third grade, and then we say, oh, you're behind in reading now. Now you're going to be, if you're 2 levels behind, then you get to go to special reading class. I think that's really mistake, and we should be figuring out how to assess what kids need way earlier and let them grow on their strengths, and so they always feel like they can do more, and then letting them really do more.
Thank you. That's probably all the time I have. 3 more, okay. I'll ask one more question that I have. What, put it right here because I want to say it right. How does the board view its role as it relates to the superintendent?
I'll start on this one if you guys don't care. I think that I see the board in a governance and oversight role. We are a conduit to the community and to families, and we're hopefully bringing that voice to the board table. But I am not an educator. I do not know, I know how to say where I want to go, but I need, and where I look to the superintendent is help us get there. You know, map out that plan of how we get there. So, and it's not going to be, I like, you know, it's the we, right? It's the, how is the whole we going to get us to where we need to go? But I guess I see governance, oversight, policy is kind of more of that role of the board, and the, how we get there in the educational planning is the superintendent and the staff, so, yeah. What?
I'm close to a thought. Okay. We, you know, there's 7 of us here when we're all here, and we do different things during the day than you do, but yet we represent the community. So, but you are also working for the community, and we represent those people. So, you bring your thoughts here, and you explain them to us, those people that are not educators, and get that point across, and then that also gets out to the community. So anyway, we are not the full-time people, but we represent the community from all different kinds of backgrounds and professions and whatnot. And I'll stop there. Yep.
Anyone else? Okay, good. Thank you so much.
Thank you again for this opportunity. I appreciate
Oh,
it.
yes. Thank you for coming out.